Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is The World This Week, and with us is Régis Le Sommier of French news magazine Paris Match. Also with us from U.S. news magazine Time, Vivian Walt. Craig Capitas, author of Bear Hunting with the Politburo, now in its third run.
Third run, looking for a fourth.
Okay. Harold Hyman of the French all-news station BFM TV. Welcome to all of you. Just before the break, we were discussing the first tests that'll come for François Hollande. Craig Capitas, that brings us to Greece. How soon into Hollande's mandate does he get that 3 a.m. phone call from the head of the European Central Bank, saying from Mario Draghi, saying, François, we have a little problem in Athens?
About 35 seconds ago, I think he received it. I was sitting there with a bunch of businessmen in Greece last week on the West Coast. And someone comes in and said, one of these businessmen, he said, it's the end of the world here. It is the end of the world. Locusts are descending upon us. It's the apocalypse. And I said, Ed, I think that metaphor might be a little bit over the top. He said, no, locusts are descending upon us. Northern Greece is overrun with locusts at the moment. It's looking to wipe out all of the agriculture. Big story. This has been in the paper for the past couple of days. It's bad. They can't agree on a government. As you just reported, the left party, the radical left party, won't go sit down with PASOK. We have another election coming up there on the 17th. And I think it's reached a point that anyone who says they know what's going to happen in Greece is person, don't believe him, because that's the same person who says, I don't get drunk on champagne. I don't think anyone knows at this point. I really don't. It's gotten that bad.
On champagne.
Yeah. Well, one other statistic here, which was reported over the weekend. Suicides are up 22% in Greece over the past 2 years, to the point where the World Health Organization is actually sending a team there, and they're having all of these meetings to figure out how to stop this. And the doctors and physicians and psychiatrists who have studied this are saying that this high spike up in suicides is a direct result of the economic chaos. Mm-hmm. So I think all bets are off there. If you guys have any ideas what's going to happen in Greece, tell the Greeks. Tell us.
Vivian Wald?
You know, the amazing thing is, if you think back 10 years, the EU and joining the euro was supposed to be all about stability. It was supposed to give you a kind of secure cushion that no matter what happened, you were part of this big club that was going to bolster you up. And what's really amazing is this kind of slow boil crisis that's suddenly really become like an implosion. It is just... It's almost like the Eurozone didn't have a plan to deal with this.
And part of that backlash, in regards to what you're saying, Régis Le Sommier, there was a report on French television this week about French banks and how much they went headfirst into Greece. Do you expect to see a backlash against financial institutions? We haven't really seen one on a large scale in this country.
Well, I think it could happen very well for Spain. I mean, because Spain is the next in line, and it's going to be much more serious. I think. We've heard about apocalypse starting in Greece, but I think with Spain, even Obama this week said that they have to watch carefully what's going on there, because the Americans have a lot at stake. So of course everything is linked, and the banking system is actually looking at what's going on over there with very extra care and with a sense of fear, I think, at this point. And but with Greece, as an editorial, we're looking. I mean, every week now we've just sent a team of reporters there, and we're like, what are we going to do next? I mean, we've done all the story. We're talking about suicide. We've shown people that actually set themselves on fire in order to protest. I mean, these scenes. I mean, there's always been a tough element of partisanship in Greece politics. I mean, Greece used to be a dictator under the regime of the colonels, but seeing people setting themselves on fire is something that was unseen, and so we've seen that. We've now this time we've had a bit of exotic thing with this sort of Nazi party that's in parliament. and we can show that, if people like that actually make it to Parliament, you have something quite serious on your hands. The left wing is another thing. We're going to see the sort of local Mélenchon, who's actually ruling the show over there and saying, I'm not going to join with PASOK. And so it's where is this country going? And
Chaos is a Greek word, and it is chaotic.
And then again, the Germans are starting, they said, with the Greek, they're starting to get people accustomed with the idea that actually Greeks could leave the euro without, that it could be possible that Greece leave the euro. That's what the Germans are trying to do right now.
On the World This Week's Facebook
might
page,
be realistic.
On the World This Week's Facebook page, we asked you if Athens will stay in the Eurozone, and David from Rouen, France, wrote, will Athens stay in Greece? Even more importantly, how many Greeks will stay in Greece? Are people like, is there an exodus of Greeks leaving their own country?
Well, there is. I did a story a few months ago on a Greek chef here in Paris who over the past 2 years has had hundreds of friends, neighbors, relatives, friends of friends contacting her, trying to find work in Paris or even a place to live in France because there's nothing there. She tells me within the Greek community here, this is the trend. But where are they going to go?
Australia.
Germany.
Well, there's lines at the Australian Embassy. In fact, the Australian Embassy has for the past 6 months been holding essentially re-education camps at various civic auditoriums in Athens, training people to fill out the forms, telling them what they need to go to Australia. But there's something more important here that being Greek, I can tell you, and I think this is probably true for any nationality, beyond the physical movement of leaving a country, there's a psychological exodus. And that psychological exodus from the country has been going on for the past 4 years. And that's why one of the reasons why you're seeing these suicides. This is what people do when they have nothing. There's a sense of forlornness there, that going back to drachma is inevitable, that Europe is going to forget about Greece, that Greece is essentially going to become an extension of Albania, and more investment capital is going to go to Fyrom, Macedonia, which is advertising heavily and getting investment capital. The situation, one has to put this, and I think you have to be cautious, but you spend time there. I think if any of you here went down there to do a story and walk through it, you're going to see the same. You're going to sadly see the same things.
A final point on this, Régis Le Sommier mentioning how the angles have been looked over and everything. In light of what Craig is saying, and it looks like we are headed to another round of voting. Harold Hyman, do you think that on your television station, now that the French elections have passed, that there'll be a lot more attention to what goes on in Greece?
Yes, we had correspondence almost right away after the French election, keeping us up to date. And we followed it quite heavily before the election frenzy. Really, the election frenzy just wiped out maybe about a month, I would say, of the normal attention that you would pay to Greece. But just to point out one sort of long-term thing, the Greeks are now evolving into an Argentina in our midst, and there's something I hear all the time is that they never really had a state, and that they never had land delimitations, so they never had proper taxing.
There was never land registry.
Right, land registry, right, cadastre, and that they're now facing this sort of carelessness, and they're paying the bill at the worst time.
All right. Speaking of elections, 2 weeks from now, Egypt picks a president, a poll that's wide open, like never before after the fall of Hosni Mubarak, and a campaign really full of surprises. Last week, it was rioting in the streets of Cairo against the ban on a popular Salafist candidate. This week, it was millions sitting down to watch a first-ever candidates debate between two of the frontrunners, a popular former leader of the Muslim Brotherhood and a former Mubarak foreign minister turned Arab League chair.
Does Dr. Amr Moussa think that after having been a minister in the previous regime, which the Egyptian people overthrew after 30 years, in the regime which created the problem, that he can emerge as a leader who can solve the problem?
I can also say that you too were silent. You used to defend the positions of the Muslim Brotherhood and not the interests of Egypt, but only the positions of the Brotherhood.
Vivian Walt, the French presidential debate ran 20 minutes over. This thing went on for 6 hours, and it had that little Egyptian touch, which was apparently Abdel Fattah was caught in Cairo traffic on the way to the studio.
Well, exactly. And I think probably 99% of the country sat riveted to their televisions for 6 hours. It was unbelievable. If you really think about it, 16 months ago, you have a leader who seemed completely untouchable, who would go on television, which he totally controlled, and tell the country what to think. And now you have two politicians going at each other with, no holds barred. It was just, I think, awesome in the real sense of the word. Just incredible.
Régis Sommier?
If Egypt is able to pull itself together and stay united, I mean, not united, it's obviously very divided, but if it's able to function as a state, if we can say that those riots and these type of debates are steps towards a better democracy or some form of democracy, then there's hope, I think. But it's going to be chaotic. But I mean, let's remember that Egypt is 80 million people. It's the mother of the Arab states. So it needs some sort of it needs to work together. I mean, there's a huge things at stake at this point.
Huge things at stake, a lot up in the air. By the way, the U.S. also picks a president this year, but not till November. That's why many were surprised that so early in the campaign, Barack Obama this week came out with a statement that's never come before from a person sitting in the White House.
At a certain point, I've just concluded that for me personally, it is important for me to go ahead and affirm that I think same-sex couples should be able to get married.
Harold Hyman, he makes this statement the same week where voters in North Carolina, 61% of them, reject that concept.
Well, the country is completely divided on many issues, and outside of the validity of Darwin, you have gay marriage. Those two things completely separate people. So that if you want to know what somebody is like, you say, what do you think of Darwin and what do you think of gay marriage? And you've got your issue. You've just divided the country into two blobs. So he finally climbed on to the bandwagon of the blob to which he belongs, which is some sort of, I guess you would call it center-left. And since the gay organizations have been hounding him for all this time, and since he is in any case anathema to the people who don't believe in Darwin, there's nothing to lose, there's only to gain. So suddenly he found it very virtuous to say this. Adding that, it's a state's issue anyway, so he really didn't get himself too wet.
That's true, and it came right after the North Carolina vote about putting in the Constitution in North Carolina that union could only be between a woman and a man.
30th state to do that out of 50.
Yeah, but let me follow up on what has just been said. Is that I think if Obama feels comfortable at this point to say I'm for gay marriage, it means a lot about what the direction of the election. Romney has secured the candidacy, and Romney is a sort of centrist Republican, and Romney and Obama are going to go again after the same voters. All those people you just mentioned, denying Darwin and everything, are going to go for Romney anyway. So Obama has to secure the people also, the centrist people or all those groups that voted for him in 2004 if he wants to be reelected. So the election this time is not going to be hijacked by people like Rush Limbaugh or, it's not going to be them, or it's not going to be the evangelical right that's going to be at stake, important in this election. It's going to be more a pool of people that voted for Obama that are somehow, now hesitant about, casting their vote for him another time. And I think if he does that, he knows that he doesn't fear he's never going to get the far right or the right-wing people.
But it's independents who will decide this election, not, the left or the right. There's
Yeah,
millions of people who we know will either vote Republican or vote Democrat. The real question is, the middle bloc, which is up for grabs.
And doesn't it force Romney to tack right? Because Romney's going to be hounded. Everybody's going to be asking him, of course, to react to this issue.
Romney has, but to quote from the 1967 Supreme Court decision, Loving versus the state of Virginia, what Obama did is, quote, odious to a free people. Let's make no mistake about what President Obama did here. There's an expression in the United States that goes back to the civil rights days and before. It's called enshrined discrimination. This was done with abortion. This was done with equal rights for minorities. And what enshrined discrimination is to say it's up to the states. Mm-hmm. You enshrine the discrimination. If Obama was really for this, then he would try to say, I'm going to bring before Congress in my first term, or my first week of my second term if I win, that we're going to enact laws.
Which was the case with civil rights, which was the case with abortion.
Exactly. And by the way, there are many jurists in the United States, and Obama, remember, he's supposed to be a Supreme Court constitutional scholar, who would say that there's this Loving versus the state of Virginia in '67, which was based on a white man can't marry a black woman and vice versa, that this was a sectarian decision by the state of Virginia to disallow this and give people and throw people in prison for 5 years if they were caught marrying out of their race. There's an argument within the legal community in the United States.
So Obama is not taking it.
No, he's not taking the high ground here. He's taking a very low ground route. Then he gets on a plane and he goes to George Clooney's house. Mm-hmm. In Los Angeles, which is and raises $15 million. Mm-hmm. What a great politician!
Barack Obama lacking backbone, according to Craig Kopitas. I want to thank you for being with us, Régis Le Sommier, Vivian Walt, and Harold Hyman. That's it for this edition of The World This Week. Thank you for watching.